also think people have a pie-in-the-sky view of the liturgy. Like if you go to a traditional Latin Mass now, it's people that are there because they want to be.
Right.
And because they have a particular devotion to the Mass. The priest is offering it for the same reason.
Yep.
But in the 50s, it would have just been, you know, masses were rushed. They weren't, there wasn't like choirs, like scolae at every Mass. You know, it was...
So I hear that, and I hear people say things like that. Like if you ask somebody from this time period, they'll tell you. And I don't know how convinced I am by it. Like I kind of want some data on that, because it seems to me that a typical low Mass is more beautiful than many Novus Ordo Masses. And it seems that and we'll get into this later. Yeah. We don't have to get into the liturgy stuff right now, but there's a lot more room for the liturgy to kind of fall apart and run amok than there was in the Tridentine Mass.
Right, and we can get into that. I think the point is that the priests were often rushing it, which actually still happens. I've seen it. There's times when I can read Latin pretty good, especially liturgical Latin, and the priest will end up a page or two ahead of me, and he's supposed to be saying it, not just reading it. And so, I mean, that sort of happened.
When you talk to people from the 50s, or they'll say this, like, who's having these conversations? Like, have you personally had these conversations?
I've had conversations with my mom. I've had conversations with her mother.
And I mean, your logic makes sense. The reason people today go to a Latin Mass is because they love the liturgy, they love the reverence. The priest is there for the same reason, so you should probably expect a higher caliber than if it's just... Yes, the kind of standard
I guess what
thing.
I'm saying is you don't go to the traditional Latin Mass by accident. Back in the 50s, it was just, we already know that even now people go to the Novus Ordo just because they feel the obligation or culturally or whatever, right?
Good point.
You know, well, that was just the Mass you went to. Most of it was silent, so people were either praying the rosary if they were devout or just waiting for it to be over. They didn't really interact with it very much. It wasn't a pious thing. It wasn't like most of the Masses were these beautiful Gregorian chants. Most of them were silent. You know, it wasn't, low Masses have like no music. I'm pausing on this moment because I'm trying to understand it, and you're kind of sharing some stuff with me that's helping me do that.
I'm trying to think of an analogy, right? Or like it would be like if the Novus Ordo, as we know it, let's say the best version of the Novus Ordo, just devolved entirely into some of these horrendous things we see where like a priest is at a beach with a floaty and he's celebrating Mass. Let's just suppose that became the standard, like Mass is celebrated at beaches. And then you had a group of people who were like, no, we want to go back to like this beautiful Novus Ordo that we remember. And then if people were flooding in to kind of, you would get the best version of the Novus Ordo at that point.
Right.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. And I have talked to other like scholars and older priests that were around during that time.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you that too. One story I heard is that a lot of daily Masses they would choose to do the Requiem Mass because it was shorter. So
yeah, and none of what we're saying here is an argument for why the liturgical changes that took place were good.
Yeah, I'm not.
Like, that's a different argument.
That's
right?
a completely separate
because you
question.
could still argue that then what should have happened is that people should have celebrated the Holy Mass reverently, and people should have learnt why it was so beautiful, what it was, what they were participating in.
Right. It's not an argument against the liturgy. It was the pastoral concern of, are people just going through the motions? Like, do they really have faith? Are they really engaged in what's going on? Are they really praying when they're there? It wasn't a question of just the externals. It really was a pastoral problem of, we're culturally Catholic, but are we really Catholic? You know, are you Catholic just because you're a good Irishman? Or are you Catholic because you firmly believe?
Yeah.
And you're devout? Like, those are two separate questions.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, do us a favor, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the video, like, and subscribe.